Hey guys, Scott here. Welcome to the patch notes for 9.4.0. This is for the Vecna release in 3 weeks from now. So what I usually do is go over the patch notes and all the new perks and things like that, and then I'll spend the entire day playing the killer today on stream, and then tomorrow I'll have my actual first impressions on how the killer works. But for the most part, I like going over the actual patch notes themselves and thinking about how the new perks are going to be used and things like that. So obviously, new killer, Vecna. We're all not surprised by this, but should be pretty neat. I don't know how this is going to translate to actual abilities from what I can read in the description, but like I said, we'll leave that for the next video tomorrow. Let's go over the actual perks he's going to have, though. First one is Turn Back the Clock. After hooking Survivor for 60 seconds, press the ability button to make target generator within 20 meters explode, lose 10% of that progress, and start regressing. So basically what this is an infinite, weaker, but more controllable pain resonance. So pain resonance, if you guys don't know, you put somebody on a Scourge hook for the first time, and then the generator with the highest progress loses 15%, but you can only do that 4 times per match, which means you'll have a max of 60% regression, basically. This theoretically has 120 max, which is better, but it does not have the information. It doesn't automatically regress the most progressed generator because you need to know which generator to regress. So it's got some pros and cons. I think this overall is probably slightly better than Pain Resonance, but you probably want to combine it with something that lets you see generator progresses, and a lot of add-ons do that, and Vecna himself has another hex that we're going to be talking about later that does that as well. But you probably want to have a bit more information, things like Jagged Compass. You want to know which generator to target with his power, but if you do know the correct one to target, this will offer you slightly more value than Pain Resonance, albeit at less of a bursty rate and more like consecutively through the match. So more overall total progress, but less in a quick burst and less, directly on the generator you need it to be used unless you've got information. So I think that's pretty well balanced, honestly. I'm not really sure if it's better or worse than Pain Res. I'm thinking it's slightly better. If you've got good game sense, I would think this perk is slightly better, just based on the fact that it has no restrictions for first time or Scourge hooks, which is really nice. So that should be a nice perk to use. Next, we have Secret Project. When a totem is blessed or cleansed, block a random unblocked generator for 30 seconds. When one generator becomes blocked, you gain undetectable for 30 seconds. So I see this more as like a synergy perk, not necessarily for the first part of the ability, which is sort of whatever. When someone, cleanses a totem, a random gen gets blocked. That's not really anything. This is more to combine with things like Deadlock or, Dead Man Switch or anything that's going to block the generators, Thrilling Tremors, whatever. It's a synergy perk. You want to use this perk when you've got other perks that allow you to block generators, and now you'll have a big chunk of 30 seconds of undetectable on top of that. This can wreak havoc on killers like Bubba, who, normally can't get very close, who are very deadly at close range, but can't get that close. So I can think of a lot of killers, Oni, for example, that this would be very useful on, but you do have to kind of synergize your build around having it. So far, both of these kind of require other perks to use, but when you are using with other perks, they're actually extremely good. So interesting way to balance it, but I don't have a problem with that design. I think it's pretty interesting. Finally, we have Hive Mind. So this perk is kind of weird. Whenever you hook a survivor, adult totem becomes a hex totem, and I assume that means when you have a hex totem up, all the gens are highlighted so you can see the generator progress, kind of like Wraith's add-on, where you can just, at all times when you're stealth, see the progress of all generators. I assume it means when there's a hex up. These things are not linked in description, so I'm not sure. I'll have to test it in-game when I'm actually able to, but I believe that means when there's a hex totem up, then these effects take place. And also, when you're down to the last generator, all three of those generators are going to explode, lose 10% of their progress, and start regressing. And then that hex becomes dull. I'm assuming this is just going to be a single totem because it says the first time you hook any survivor. That doesn't necessarily mean each survivor. It means the first time ever in the match you hook a survivor. So I assume once that happens, the totem is up, then you get, you can see all generator progress, and then if it's still up by the end of the match, then you'll have this 3-gen effect, which is frankly not that good. Overall, this is probably his weakest perk. I feel like that's just too situational. I don't know. I think like it being tied to a hex is just sort of meaningless unless the hex is not relevant to these, at which point I'm like, well, then why does the hex matter? I don't know. I guess we'll see in game, but that perk's a little weird based on the description. Next, Survivor perks for Dustin. We have Bada Bada Boom. This perk is extremely good. After completing only 20% of a progress on a generator, you can press an ability button next to a window to trap it for 60 seconds. The trap triggers when the killer vaults it and become hindered with 50% for 6 seconds. So this is basically like the anti-bamboozle kind of. If a killer is going to follow you by vaulting a window, you can probably trap it. The question is, how quickly can you trap it? If it's like chemical trap where it's damn near instant, this perk is going to be insanely good, because only 20% of a gen, you only have to sit on it for like 18 seconds, and now you've got this incredibly strong anti-vaulting perk against the killer. So that's going to be really good on windows that have to be vaulted. For example, like, the game. Like, there's some windows on certain maps where the killer has to vault the window. It's the only option they have. And then, sort of like, with Shack Pallet, you have to kick the Shack Pallet. So using Chemical Trap on that kind of pallet, using Bada Bada Boom on that kind of window, for example, is going to be really, really strong. So I am not looking forward to going against that on killer, which is a sign of a very good perk. Is it overpowered? I'm not really sure yet, but I can see this being pretty damn annoying, because that seems pretty good. Change of plan. You start with 2 tokens. When inside a locker and holding a non-event toolbox, press the ability button 2 to spend a token and transform your toolbox into a medkit of the same rarity. With a random add-on of the same rarity, the new medkit has 100% of its charges. So that is an interesting type of kind of variable play here. So you can kind of bring a medkit with a bunch of charges on it, maybe heal yourself. Well, the thing is, you'd want to bring a toolbox. I think the idea behind this perk is they want you to bring in a toolbox and maybe like use a portion of it, and then later combine that with, switching it to a medkit when you're actively getting chased. So they basically want you to like rush something at the start, and then later, once the killer's applying pressure and you need to heal, now you've got this ability to heal as well. The problem is, because the medkit has 100% of its charges, the thing is, if this is 100% of its charges, as in it is fully healed, then this perk is actually extremely good. If it's 100% of the charges that the toolbox had, then this perk is kind of shit. The way it's worded, I'm willing to bet that this means you just simply get a new fully charged medkit. At which point, yeah, the entire build flow there is you bring a juiced up Commodious toolbox, you burn it immediately upon loading into the match, and then you can go and then switch that to a medkit for later when the killer actually damages you. So it's sort of a risk-free toolbox, because one of the biggest fears of bringing a toolbox is you're not going to get to use it at the right time, whatever. But now you can just use it at the start. Like, who gives a shit? You're going to get a med kit anyway later. So, and the fact that you can repeat this process if you were to find another one, that seems actually pretty good. And that dynamic switching of gameplay, I mean, it's a cool name, change of plan. You're basically going from rushing at the start, now staying alive towards the later portions of the game. So that seems pretty damn good in my opinion. I feel like I would be slightly worried about that, because that is going to allow people to bring these juiced up toolboxes without fear of not being able to heal later in the game as well. So that seems very good. Full circuit. For each other survivor repairing a generator with you, the size of the good skill check zone is increased by 25%. When repairing with one other survivor, you repair 5% faster. So that seems pretty okay. 5% faster is pretty much nothing. Good skill check zone is increased by 25%. That, I mean, you would want it to be the great skill check zone, not the good skill check. The good skill check zone is it's like a quarter of an entire circle. So I'm hoping this is a typo and they meant great, because if it's great, then sure, that's fine. But just the 5% faster is just a shittier proof thyself at that point. It's like, I don't even know what the point of bringing that perk is. So that seems pretty bad, unless this is a typo and they actually mean great there. Next, we have the perks for 11. So first is Extrasensory Perception. After crouching for 4 seconds, you see auras in an expanding radius up to 44 meters, have Elusive and Oblivious. When you stop crouching after 11 seconds, the perk enters a 40-second cooldown. So it's sort of something to just give you information, I guess. I'm not sure what auras it's involving. I'm guessing it just means the perks that you already have that have aura reading. So it's sort of like a triggered open-handed, but on a much grander scale, but you have to stand still. But then it also has a built-in effect where you become elusive and oblivious, so you get Giga Iron Will, basically. Well, that's the thing, though. It's oblivious, not... Elusive is going to give you Giga Iron Will, but then you become oblivious as well, so you also can't hear the killer. I guess it's to mimic... like in the show when Ella's in her mind space there, she actually can't interact with people in real life. So thematically, that's really cool. I get that, but translating it to gameplay, I don't know. I feel like it's weird, because what auras is it talking about? There's no built-in aura reading to the perk from what I can tell from the description, which would mean you'd have to bring other aura reading perks with it. So that might just mean the auras of everything. If it means the auras of everything, like the killer... traps on the ground, generators and stuff like that, then this perk is actually pretty pretty crazy and would be very annoying to go against and survive with friends. If this is simply a perk that buffs other aura reading, this perk is terrible. So it really, again, I'm sorry, I can't give you a better, the patch is not out yet at the time of recording this, so I can't give you a better description, but based on this description, this could either mean you see everything or this only amplifies the effects of your current auras. If it's you see everything, good perk. If not, bad perk. Simple as that. Next, we see you. When the killer reveals your aura, gain 1 token. When you have 4 tokens, spend all tokens, and you and other survivors see the killer's aura for 15 seconds. This perk has a 10-second cooldown, so kind of some synergy with extra perception there. But this perk, in my opinion, is mixed because the killer has to reveal your aura 4 times, which happens more often than you think with how many aura perks and add-ons and things like that exist nowadays. But at the same time, you get 15 seconds of aura reading that everybody can see on the killer. So that can just straight up save another survivor's life when it's happening. The problem is usually when aura reading happens, the killer is not actively in a chase. Usually, like, you know, they're doing nowhere to hide, or they got barbecue and chili, or they got friends to the end. They've got something that is usually used when they're not actively in a chase, which means a lot of this time is probably not going to be used to help somebody in a chase. There are definitely times like you might run by an undying totem or something like that, and that triggers it, and then suddenly you're getting chased, and then you've got 15 seconds of wall hacks, which is insanely good. But like I said, usually killer aura reading is not done during an active chase. So the actual efficacy of the perk is not super high, but when it works well, it would be insanely useful. It's got a very short cooldown, but yeah, like I said, it's mixed on how good that'll actually end up being. Soft-spoken. For each other survivor repairing a generator with you, the range with the generator repair noise is heard is reduced by 25%. When repairing with another survivor, you repair 5% faster. So kind of like Dustin's perk, but a little bit different. This makes it so if you got, 4 people on a gen, the generator would not be making repair sounds at all, so the killer might not think to check it, even though it's almost, done. But for the most part, pretty shit. I would never bring this perk. It just seems not great. 2v8 is getting a bunch of changes as well. We're getting Chucky, just a couple of number tweaks, and then scampering actually breaks a pallet, which is probably going to be annoying as shit to go against, but also it's 2v8, so who gives a hell? It's just random chaos at that point. Nemesis, my god, they did it. They're actually adding 2 more zombies. They got the researchers at CERN to code the AI to allow that to not crash the game and explode our universe, but actually 4 zombies when you're playing Nemesis now, and the zombies move faster. That should make Nemesis actually not terrible in 2v8, because he really got like basically no upgrades, and in fact is downgraded when you're playing Wesker with him as well. So that's good to see. In terms of killer classes in 2v8, they've done a couple of tweaks to the classes themselves, and interestingly, the main thing I want to talk about is the new one, which is Torchbearer. This is something I think was sorely needed in the whole role system, because survivors have not really gotten a new thing to do in this mode for a while, but now there's a new class called Torchbearer that allows them to start with a flashlight, and they charge over 60 seconds, and then you can also get a flashbang when that's also done. So basically it's the saving class now, which I think was sorely needed to get more survivors to play 2v8, because like I said before many times, killer queue times are so incredibly bad in 2v8 that it's just not worth playing, in my opinion, as killer. But every time survivors get new tools like this, it shifts the balance a little bit. Killer queues might be 15 minutes instead of 20 minutes now. So the more stuff Survivor gets, the quicker killer queue times will actually be, and this is something that has been sorely needed for them. So actually having a flashlight class, yeah, sure, it might be annoying to deal with, but at least you can play the game as killer. You just might get blinded 1 or 2 times during a match, but for the most part, I think that is a good idea to actually change. They've also added Groaning Storehouse and Rotten Fields to it as well, and they've also changed the herb system that was for the Resident Evil 2v8 into a tonic system that kind of just roughly does the same thing with, the green and yellow herbs, so that's interesting to see. They're just trying to make the Survivor gameplay more interesting now. They've also tweaked the terror radii colliding with each other like 2 black holes to be, I guess, more clear to understand which is coming from which direction and things like that, because it would be pretty not clear. Bunch of bug fixes. We'll see if that actually happens, but most of those are 2v8 related. Lot of 2v8 stuff, which unfortunately, well, it's interesting. The PTB for 2v8 is going to be starting in 2 days. So we're having Vecna come out today, and then we're having the 2v8 PTB coming out in 2 more days. So I cannot even imagine how bad killer queues are in a PTB for 2v8. Like, holy hell, we might get 1 game by that time Vecna comes out. So anyway, that's it for the patch. I am now going to go spend the rest of the day playing Vecna and giving you guys my thoughts on him once I have some pretty good impressions of him. But that's it. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.